Welcome back to the FloTrack podcast. I'm Kevin Sully. FloTrackPodcast@gmail.com is our email address. You can find the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and on our website, FloTrack.org/FloTrack podcast. Joining me today, the owner of a brand new 76ers jersey. It's Gordon Mack. Good morning, Gordon.
Dude, the new 76ers jerseys are not what I thought they would be. Every year, Sixers fans get really excited about the new alternate jerseys that they're designing, and everyone thought they were getting the throwback 2000, 2001 jerseys, the black, the AI wore, that old the Sixers logo that was a new design back then, but then they switched back to the old design. But no, we get this weird black jersey with the Philadelphia type, but if you look at it closely, it shows a landscape of, I believe, the Schuylkill River, or showing
Okay.
it's like a skyline of something, but in the skyline, the letters TTP are stitched in between the skyline, an homage to trust the process. And we're now trusting the process. We brought in Sam Hinkie's dad, Daryl Morey, to finish it off. We got the NBA draft in a week. And then we got NBA free agency. And then we got Sixers basketball December 22nd. So, this wasn't an NBA podcast, but guess what? We're now a month away from being an NBA podcast again.
Do you think, from a graphic design perspective, that some of these teams get too ambitious? They try to put too much stuff in it with too much meaning instead of just making a cool, simple logo?
Well, I think the thing is, typically when you make a sport logo, you make one every 25 years, right? You're like, all right, we need to come up with a logo for a sport, 25 years of the logo. Now you're trying to make a new one every year. You're going to have some duds, and you're going to have some overachievers and underachievers. I think that's why they're always trying to reinvent the wheel every, 365 days. So you're bound to get a couple. What do we do that? Remember that time in 2021 when we wore those weird ass black jerseys? That's what this is going to be.
Yeah.
So
I remember when Oregon redesigned their basketball court, and then they put the tree, but then they also put all these other little symbols on it, and they were different references to the person who the court was named after, and it just was incredibly busy. One thing I did like about the 76ers recently, probably the only thing I liked about the 76ers recently, was I was a big fan of their court. When they changed their court, I thought it looked really sharp.
I appreciate that.
That's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Do you know what I was doing late last night?
You're either on Sixers Reddit or you were crunching some NIU stats. Those are my two guesses.
Close, but not there. I was on Sixers Reddit, but that's not part of it. I started creating my 2021 indoor track rankings.
Oh, okay.
I don't have them. They're not ready. They're not ready, but it's going to be hard because I realize I'm ranking people who haven't done anything, right? There's been no track running. Everything stopped right before the championships. So it's very hard to decide who the top 8 are in every event. But Oregon actually might be pretty good. That was a little shocker. Arkansas still up in there. NAU craziness might still be there. LSU is still good. The typical players are still good, but we'll have our official rankings hopefully sometime in December because it takes time to calculate it to see who's running, who's not running. I did notice I noticed, Corey Poole is? He's a hurdler for Florida. He wasn't on the Florida roster. He wasn't on the Florida roster. So that was the one this was like a really good 400 hurdler who's not on a Power 5 team. So, I have to go through every roster, figure it out. Are they running? Are they not running? It's a little chaos, but we'll figure it out.
Those teams you mentioned, those were men's or women's?
Men's.
Okay. Tell me more about Oregon. I know you don't want to get too much in depth here, but why was Oregon such a surprise? Who are their big pieces here that could score them some points?
Well, you thought James West was done, but he's on the roster again. James West back from the dead. This guy was a senior when he joined Oregon in like 2017, and he's just been a senior every year. You just wish that Oregon would have say, hey, we know he has 4 years, but so we should call him a freshman. But they called him a senior when he joined campus at age 22, and he's still on the roster, even though he's out there running diamond leagues, all doing all this stuff, roaming Europe. But hey, he's still a Duck apparently. So that's a big score, and I don't know. Oregon has a lot of good distance people. They have a good 800-meter crew. And a lot of the only people who left, everyone is basically coming back except for notable distance runners like Tyler Day, Joe Klecker, Carlos Villarreal, and a couple others. So that only helped really Oregon because they were getting a lot of their points in the mile, 3K, 5K. And now it's just they move up, right? Because there's not new people coming in to replace them outside of Wesley Kiptoo. So anyway, we're going to dive deep into that in December, I think. I think that's when those rankings will come out. And it's going to be fun. Okay. I'm going to be doing dual rankings. I'm going to have the cross country rankings, indoor track rankings. This is my moment, man. I've been waiting for this. Doing 2 rankings at once.
And you haven't looked at the women's yet, I take it?
No. It was just a data pool, kind of high level looking at it, starting to go through rosters and be like, oh, okay. It is manual. So then you stop, you look at Sixers Reddit, then you come back, look at NFL highlights, then come back, stuff like that. So,
okay. Anyway. Well, the other reason we wanted to talk this morning wasn't just because of the Sixers question, but because of the NIU question. You're on the NIU beat 24/7, and it looks like they ran a time trial yesterday and they wore their jerseys. So anytime a team wears their jerseys, you take note. That's the rule.
Yeah. So what they did was they were in Arizona. Apparently it was 85 degrees according to the coach. So running a 5K in 85 degrees, you normally don't do that, right? We think about all the fast 5Ks, so it's always in Palo Alto and cool weather, but running in 5K in 85 degrees is kind of something, especially in November, right? You're not prepared for that. But apparently what happened was they ran 2 races. Nico Young and Luis Grijalva both were pacing. They were pacing a fast race and a slower race. The fast race was won by Abdihaman Nur in sub 14 minutes. Corey Gorgas ran well, ran I think sub 14:10. And then the slower race was in the 14:20s. But Nico Young, he was there. He did a workout as opposed to crossing the finish line. Of course, Mike Smith is going to give us the satisfaction of seeing 13-something next to Nico Young's name. We have to wait to see what he can do. What do you think Nico Young's personal best will be by July 2021?
In the 5,000?
Yeah.
I think he'll run 13:28 at Stanford or Peyton.
Wow, really?
Yeah. I think he'll run that fast.
So perspective-wise, I think Grant Fisher, his 5K debut was a 13:40s, maybe 13 mid-40s. There hasn't been many freshmen to debut sub 13:30. What makes you think he's going to be one of those faster debuts?
Well, I didn't say debut. I just said you said by.
Well, even by the end, yeah.
And so you're saying end of spring track season next year.
Yeah.
I think he will be under 13:30. I mean, he ran ridiculously fast last year in that time trial by himself when Rupp was watching him, and he had no help out there. I think he's better than these other guys were in high school. And I think there's also going to be a lot of racing opportunity, if you're saying 2021. So I'm assuming we get back to normal racing situations, we're going to get a lot of opportunities for him to race. So I could see him under 13:30. To me, that doesn't seem like a stretch. given what he's done at the high school level already. I mean, it's the thing is, and your favorite word of these past couple months has been data points. We don't really have what's our latest Nico Young data point. It is that 5K, right?
Yeah. And his 3K from indoors, he ran sub 8. So,
yeah. You don't think he can run sub 13:30 next year?
I just feel like that's quick. I mean, I was thinking maybe he's like going to run like 13:45. But
Okay.
you're more bullish on it. I want to know if I guess will he be eligible for US junior records next year? I'm guessing
Yeah.
yes, right? I don't know his
Yeah.
exact age. So
He is. I'm looking it up right now. I'm going to get the junior records. Those
it's
are
always
always a tough one.
confusing who has those records because there's a lot of people
He's
who've
18.
broken that record, but there's a lot of people who've broken that record, but have never got it ratified. So USATF doesn't really acknowledge certain people who've run fast in the 5K. But
Yeah.
is it who owns it? Is it German Fernandez?
I believe
who
it's
has the
so
5K?
so Nico is 18 years, 107 days today. He will turn 19 not until July next year.
Okay.
So he would have next year to do it. 13:50 is what he ran in Portland, and that was with bad weather, not really good pacing, and before he joined a collegiate team and ran at NAU. I think there's a lot of room to grow, especially in the short term for Nico Young. That's again, that's on the high side, but I think he can do it. You get him in a fast.
So yeah,
if Peyton is back next year and we get the typical quick fields, I think he can run that fast.
the junior record is 13:25 by Fernandez from 2009. 13:25. So you think you'll flirt with German's record?
Exactly. And he's the person I thought of. I know they had completely different high school careers and approaches to those 4 years, but he's that level of talent as German Fernandez. I think he's the closest we've seen since German Fernandez to do something at the 5K level that young. So, but German did that at the end of his freshman year. Am I remembering that correctly?
I guess I assume so. Yeah, June 26th. So yeah. And then Galen Rupp has the 3K record, which is 7:49. But it's outdoors. I don't know what the indoor one is.
Now I don't know how many outdoor 5K Nico Young's going to get in, but if you run 7:56 indoors, I think definitely 7:49 outdoors is a possibility. This is the profile of a person who breaks junior records. I'm not saying he's going to go on and make 3 Olympic teams and win gold medals. I'm just saying in the short term, he's going to be breaking junior records or flirting with junior records in 2021. I'm confident of that.
No pressure, Nico. No pressure.
No, listen, the only pressure you should feel is from Gordon because once you get on the real rankings and not just the COVID rankings, the weight of the world is pushing down on you. So you think something in the 13:30 to 13:40 range?
Yeah, I think he runs like 13:41.
You don't think he can be within
really
5
good.
seconds of German Fernandez?
I don't know. I just feel like I mean,
German was great. Don't get me wrong. German was great that year.
It depends on what Mike does with him. Mike, if Mike lets him loose, then maybe. But I feel like some coaches are scared to do that, or just like don't want to risk going for broke in year one. And I just think like his talent will take him to the 13:40s, and then another year of training when the coaches hey, you can go now. We'll let you run with the big boys. We'll then throw him to a sub 13:30. I don't know. But maybe he's so good, Mike lets him go for it. I don't know. I just feel like 13:25 is fast. I just feel like 13:40 makes more sense for someone freshman year. But maybe I'm wrong. Hey,
I just look at his 13:50 from last year and I see that almost as an equivalent to a 13:40 in good weather with good pacing performance. meaning he could already have run 13:40, and then you add in the extra year. You're right. All this is contingent on him being able to get in good races. We should always say that, because if you're not in a race, you can't set a PR. It's one of those facts of track and field. But I think he'll let him. I think he's going to want to run. I think he didn't get to run cross country. He's probably not going to get to run that much indoors. He may not get to run March cross country either. I think by outdoors, you're going to want to let him go, see what he can do, especially because this is his year to chase those records. You don't get opportunities to do the age group record. I don't know how important that is to Mike Smith, but it is cool to be up there to break a record that is held by Galen Rupp, or break a record that's held by German Fernandez. He fits that profile. He fits the profile of somebody who can run that fast as a freshman. No guarantee about what his future is going to be beyond that, but I think he's in the right spot to do it.
Tell me about this race that happened in Oregon.
Hold on, I have one more NAU question.
Oh, okay.
Can I do one more NAU question?
Yeah, of course.
Corey, we're going to the other end of NAU's roster. We're going to the other end. We're not going to the heralded blue chip superstar Nico Young. We're looking at those grinders, the guys that make NAU famous. I'm talking about Corey Gorgas. His name's come up a couple times. He ran well in Stillwater. Am I remembering this correctly?
Yeah, he ran well in Stillwater.
So is this a situation where this guy is just good and overperforming the other guys, or are NAU's typical studs in the middle not up to where they should be right now?
No, I think this is just typical. He's a redshirt freshman. I think this is where they expect their redshirt freshman to be. They expect a redshirt freshman to be 14 minutes to 14:15. And then eventually by redshirt sophomore year, they're running 13:50s. He's basically on that trajectory. And it's impressive. If you look at his splits, he ran 14:08. He won his heat, but he closed in 59 seconds, which is pretty impressive. Closed in a sub 60 to run 14:08. So I'm sure he was pumped to break 14:10. He beat in his heat. There wasn't anyone. I mean, in his heat was Cade Burks and Aldo Marquez and Caleb Easton. So he was kind of in his own little category there. He wasn't going up against Abdi Hamid or Ryan Raff or Drew Bosley. But it shows, hey, man, if he's closing in 59.8 seconds and running 14:08 as a redshirt freshman in November, you got to think he's probably going to be in the 13:50s range. And yeah, they're just going to have you look at they're going to be able to qualify. They could have, I'm not sure if they'll make it to NCAAs, but NAU is going to have a shit ton of athletes in the prelims of the 5K at outdoor regionals. Like, it's going to be, they're going to be able to put, how many sub 14-minute guys are they going to have likely? They'll have Luis, they'll have Abdi Hamid, they'll have Nico Young. I think Corey will get there. I think you got to think Blaze Farrow. You got to think Theo Quacks. You got to think Brody Hasty. You think Ryan Raff should be able to break under there. Drew Bosley should be able to get back to his normal self. Like, they're going to have 9 guys break 14 minutes on their roster. And, they're going to be like the BYU of the 10K or the steeple that one year.
Yeah.
But they're going to be doing it in the harder event. That's no disrespect to BYU, but I think a lot of times everyone got really excited about BYU dominating the steeple and the 10K. But let's be honest, all the best athletes are trying to make it in the 5K. So BYU really took advantage of the margins to be like, hey, not everyone is like Morgan McDonald and Grant Fisher and Joe Klecker aren't doing the 10K. Let's kind of find our spot in the 10K, and we can get even more bodies in there. And same thing with the steeple, get even more bodies. But if NAU is able to do it in the prime event, which is the 5K, that'll be super impressive. So
I'm looking at his bio. I'm looking at Gorgas's bio. He was 9th at NXN. didn't make
Yeah.
Foot Locker finals, was 17th. But just on the standard of NAU now, we talked about this last week, of Nico Young, one of the best high school runners of all time. You have Drew Bosley coming out in his class, which was he was one of the top 3 or 4 guys that year. I think we would have said if we ranked him. You ranked him. You probably put him in the top 3 or 4. Hasty obviously had a lot of. Oh, you had him too. Hasty, did you have in the top 2 or 3?
Hasty had 1.
It's to a point where a guy comes in, gets 9th at NXN, and I'm like, man, middle of the road guy. Let's see if NAU can put some shine on him and get him up to speed. But most programs would die to have a Corey Gorgas type runner out there. But for NAU, you throw him in the pile and then you let him go. And it's just because not only were they getting top 5 NXN people, but they were getting, you're right, top 2 or 3 people in the entire nation year in and year out.
Like Corey would be the number 1 guy on most NCAA teams as a freshman, but he's like the number 7, 8 guy on this team, which just shows the craziness of NAU.
Man, well, then I'm using him as I'm using him as a point of comparison. It's like, is he good or the other people just running poorly? It's like, wait a minute, I was 9th at NXN, man. Give me some give me some credit. And also, so it wouldn't be surprising if he turns into a great runner because he's already starting off from a high point, not as high as some of the other guys on the roster, but that's a pretty dang good high school career. Nobody can say you were a dark horse in high school if you got 9th at NXN. It's just people like me who aren't paying attention to NXN results. Anyway, you want to know about the half marathon in Oregon? I know how much you love half marathons on bike paths in Oregon. This one not as interesting because Jordan Hasay only ran 74:27, and that's all I have to say about it.
Why are they doing this?
She put the uniform on.
It's so frustrating. I get it. They're trying to get like a half marathon effort in, but like if you're going to run a race on a trail by yourself, don't get race organizers involved because you're not, I don't know. It's just like, it's making,
you know what it made me think though?
You don't see Patrick Mahomes going out there to play football in his backyard against nobody. He's going to play in the NFL and I don't know. Sorry. I'm being a Debbie Downer. It's just, this is what we are. This is what we are now. There's some of the top runners in the world, in the US, have resorted to running on tow paths, in their jerseys. Yeah. So
in a jersey with the bib number. I'm looking at the pictures. Excuse me. Right now, she had 2 pacers, Craig Leon and Eric Finan. No, just a sneeze. Same spot with Rupp. There was a 180 turn out there because there's a good picture of her going around the cone at halfway. She said she was really cold and didn't feel like she could, turn over any quicker. But I started thinking about this, Gordon. Jordan Hasay, she's tuning up for something. She's running the Valencia Marathon in December. Do you think this could indicate that the previous person who ran on this bike trip path that you love so much is doing a marathon? Is Galen up going to run a marathon in December? That's what I'm asking. What do you know?
I'll ask.
Tell us. Are you gonna do some reporting right now?
Ask.
I also saw I believe Rotterdam, which was one of the ones that was still scheduled for the spring, has been pushed back. So there are so few opportunities to run a marathon. It may really just be Valencia, and then you got to wait till the Olympics or the fall to get a marathon in. So I don't know. I don't know if you want to wait. If you make your living running marathons, you are not in a position to turn them down. Not a lot of them are going to come up your way. So I just thought that was interesting.
Galen's in a unique situation, though, where I think he's only going to bother running a marathon if it's to qualify for the Olympics, to win the Olympics, to win a major, or to run an American record. Those are the only 4 situations. And I'm not sure if Valencia
Sure.
Marathon falls in one of those 4 categories.
Oh, I think it's fast. I just thought they don't have the same coach anymore, Hasay and Rupp. So I just thought it was a coincidence. Now they both have ties to Eugene, but I just thought it was coincidence that they both ran the same thing. This exact same setup. They ran it back.
We'll know by the end of the podcast if he's running Valencia, I assume. It is 7:30 in Mountain Time. Unless they don't do they do daylight savings time?
That's a $64,000
Dude,
question.
Keeping track of time in Arizona is the most confusing thing because there's one city that doesn't do daylight or one city that does mountain and doesn't do mountain. Time zones in Arizona are all messed up. It is not.
Same thing with Indiana.
Yeah. Indiana's weird too.
Mm-hmm. It's got 2 different ones as well. So I listened to you and Lincoln talk yesterday about the qualification procedure for NCAA Cross Country, and you talked about a lot of teams that you think are locks. I'm interested in who do you think, given the parameters now that we know, which are vague. They're vague, so we know, but we don't really know who you think could be potentially in trouble in this setup. All right, moving on. Next topic. Let's see if we can find.
The people who are. People who are most trouble are the people who typically qualify for NCAAs with 2 to 3 points, right? So you got to look at
name some names. Who are we talking about?
I don't know. I'm just saying in general.
Princeton.
The teams that are normally selected 25th to 31st by the COLAS system are going to be aren't going to look like they have that great of a resume when they're only running 1 or 2 races. Teams that are going to be screwed over are teams that aren't able to travel to Florida State to run in one of their invitationals that they're going to throw down in the winter. It's teams that have to stay in conference only. Those teams. Are you trying to ask for a specific team? Because you don't know. You don't know what a school's going to allow.
I'm saying,
Iona
looking at your
Iona knows. There's teams that we know are fine, like Iona, because they go, hey, just do your conference meet and we'll get in. I guess it's schools that are 3 to 5 within their conference that aren't going to be given a travel budget. Those are the schools that are in the most concern. So
what I'm asking is, looking at your rankings and going down on the men's side and the women's side, who's the first team that there's a red flag about for whatever reason on either side?
Okay,
be it travel, be it anything else. That's what I'm wondering.
Okay, look at the men's. Okay, so this was the pre-COVID rankings. These came out August 25th. But when you go down, NAU's fine, BYU's fine, Arkansas's fine, Notre Dame's fine, Iowa State's fine. Portland could be in trouble, but because I'm not sure if Portland's going to be allowed to travel. They are in the state of Oregon. I'm not sure what their COVID rules are. Portland could be in trouble if they're not given an opportunity to race anyone. Because Portland could be like, all right, let's do a dual meet with Oregon, and we're going to do the West Coast Conference Championships. So they're going to get an L to Oregon and an L to BYU, which is nothing to be ashamed of because in random meets happen. You can get L's to both of those teams. But, they need to be able to race it's going to be hard because this whole idea of who you beat, you're going to want to be able to race against people who finish top 2 in their conference, right? Because before the game was you want to race the people who are top 2 in a region, right? But I feel like now you want to find the people who are top 2 in a conference, but I feel like that's going to be harder to find. Maybe. I mean, it's hard to predict, but I feel like Portland might be in trouble because they might not be able to travel. I feel like Oregon, Colorado, Tulsa's fine because if they run their conference, they'll win it and they'll be in. Oregon, Colorado, Stanford, I think should be fine because I feel like they would be like, hey, Pac-12 is good. Take the top 3 to 5 teams. Iona should be fine. Michigan should be fine because I feel like if they're the best in their conference, they should make it. NC State's fine. Harvard, because is Ivy League going to let them run? They could be a team that could be in trouble. What place did Syracuse finish?
At ACCs?
Yeah.
They were quite a bit down there, I believe. Let me pull it up.
The men? They're probably the biggest. So Syracuse men, I would say, are the most.
They were eighth.
Eighth, yeah. Oh, yeah. So they're in trouble because they don't have anyone that they have beaten.
Oh wait, hold on.
Are you looking at women?
They were sixth. Sorry, sixth.
Still, that's pretty bad. So I would say Portland if they're not allowed to travel, and Syracuse if they're not allowed to get to another meet. So that's that. On the women's side, team. Florida State's going to be fine because I feel like they're going to have all their invitationals and be able to race as many people as possible to get their team in. Maybe a team like Boise State might be a problem because they're kind of out in the middle of nowhere. They might not be able to travel much, and their only race they're going to get is against a New Mexico and Air Force team that are pretty good, so they could end up finishing third in their conference and not making it. I could see that. Again, the Princeton women because of being the Ivy League. I mean, I think it should, in the end, all work itself out. But I do think there are people who finish. If you finish fourth in your Power 5, if you're projected to be the fourth best team in your Power 5 conference, those are the teams that need to be most worried because, top two, they're going to be like, all right, second in the Power 5, that's pretty good. Third, they'll be like, hey, it's a deep conference. Fourth, they're going to start thinking like, hey, are you actually good? Because if you finish fourth, there's always that random chance you finish sixth, right? Because a point here or there can happen. I think you got to look at all of the conference rankings, and whoever's fourth in the Power 5, those are the teams that are kind of the bubble teams that need to travel, I think, and hope that their administrations let them travel.
Well, and then in cross country, you have conferences like the Mountain West, which is a de facto Power 5. So you'd think at least 2 to 3 teams would get in there. West Coast Conference, they have a lot of strong teams in it. Maybe not as deep as Power 5, all the Power 5s, but certainly some of them. And then you start running out of teams here to get in if you're going that deep in conference meets.
Yeah. I mean, one team I feel like is the most in trouble, I guess, the Oklahoma State women, because they didn't do well at the Big 12. I mentioned this. They got finished fourth in the Big 12, mainly due because 2 of their top 3 runners one was missing, the other one's not healthy. So if Coach Smith was expecting them to be themselves by March, right now they don't have the resume to get in, and they're going to need to, go somewhere to race to get in. And I know Oklahoma State, I don't think, is hosting any pre-nationals because they don't want to mess up the course in the cold winter. So they're going to be hoping they can go to Florida State to travel. But you assume these Big 12, ACC, and SEC schools let the travel happen because, hell, they ran a conference championship in the fall. They didn't care. So,
would they risk messing up their course if it meant qualifying their women's team?
Oh, I think so. But you have to race someone. You got to find a willing partner. Everyone's going to be inviting the Sun Belt and Conference USA champions to every meet. Hey, Sun Belt champion, come on down. Hey, Conference USA champ, come on down.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you're also not going to know who the conference champs are going to be. It's harder to predict conference champions, I think, than it is to predict regional champions. Like, everyone knew, especially in the weaker regionals, knew that Texas and Arkansas are going to make the meet. So everyone knew book Texas, book Arkansas. But now you don't really have that much knowledge about the 32nd conference out there. Like people understood the 9 regions and they kind of knew these are the 2 to 5 teams that are typically finish in the top of that region. But people aren't going to know the top teams in random conferences as well. So,
but I do think you're right that the Power 5 is going to get at least 2 in per conference, and you could use that same principle that you use for regionals for conference. And Portland could be calling up the Big Ten. I know that's not geographically convenient at all, but they could be calling up the Big Ten men's favorites and trying to get in a meet with them, or the ACC men's favorites and trying to get in a meet with them.
yeah.
More often than not,
Because
they're going to stay local, and geographically, they'll probably be way more likely to, keep it close with Oregon or beat Washington. That's probably a more realistic path. But if you're just out there going head hunting, then it would make sense that you go after weak Power 5s, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think that you just hope that the people on the committee know that there's teams out there that can finish 4th in a conference that are actually pretty good. And you just have to understand hey, it's just, but at the same time, it's like, hey, if you're finished 4th in your conference, you're not a top 5 team in the nation. So like there's not going to be tears sent for you. Yeah. I mean, in the end, right, we're kind of going to be it's going to be controversial for the 15th to the 30th teams, right? Because those are the teams that none of them are ever going to win a national title, but it's kind of like interesting of, just making the meet, So no one is ever worried that Duke basketball won't make the tournament, right? So
I want to ask about individuals because we got an email about individuals, and this one from Kevin says, I think it's time to raise the red flag regarding, yes, this is my burner account, regarding individual qualifiers from the Power 5, conferences. If I am correct, 4 individuals qualified from the Big Ten last year, but with 32 auto qualifiers, it is possible that only one of those 4 would have qualified. Certainly 4 would not have. Even worse, 4 Big Ten teams qualified last year, but it appears that some additional conference champ teams would likely qualify under the new criteria rather than going deep into one conference. If fewer than 4 teams qualify, many more great runners will be left out. What do you think about that?
So basically there are 6 at-large spots so it's because you can be second in your conference or second among the individuals in your conference and still make it, right? Because they're gonna, I think, it is gonna be possible. But I think what you're just hoping is hoping that, hey, you're in the Big Ten. Hey, they take 4 to 5 teams from the Big Ten. Therefore, you'll be able to either get in as an individual, either get in as a member of a team, or just get in as an individual. But who are the 4 individuals that made it from the Big Ten that weren't on teams? That's what I want to know.
Last year?
Yeah.
Is he talking about the men?
Yeah, I don't know who he's talking about. Is he talking about the men or?
I did not specify in here. Well, let's see which teams made it from the Big Ten last year. Michigan, Purdue, Wisconsin, Indiana. I mean, I know like George Kuchar probably made it from Nebraska.
The at-large were Ewan Makepeace. Okay. Gallerup is not running Valencia.
So confirmed. Okay, where is he running? Just kidding. He's running in Seville.
Individual qualifiers. We should have prepared for this.
Well, sometimes the emails come and they surprise you, Gordon. They go a lot of different directions.
Okay, hold on. What? So Morgan Beetlescum.
Yep.
Qualified individually.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see. Okay. So the Big Ten is divided into 2 different regions. So therefore, 4 people did make it. Mortal Beatlescombe made it for Michigan State, and then Alec Basin of Minnesota made it in the Midwest Regional. Nathan Belenek of Iowa made it, and George Kush of Nebraska made it.
Boom.
So
got 1 out of 4.
His point. It's basically a Big Ten was divided into 2 regions. Now they're 1 technically. So it's a disadvantage. My argument would be
for those listening and not watching Gordon put his hand out as if he was reaching. Your argument is, I hope it all works out. That's your argument.
My argument is, it's a 38th individual who makes cross country important.
Every person.
How many individuals qualifiers are All-American any given year? That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean that's a good
last year.
100%. That's a good point. And you're going to have to draw the line somewhere, and this year is not going to be. It's not going to be perfect, because if you start doing 2 individuals per conference, then in some of these weaker conferences, you're going to send people who shouldn't be there. I guess you extend the at-large system. Would that help?
Yeah. So looking at this on the men's side, 6 of the 38 individuals finished top 40.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's a very small percentage. So like, kind of 15% of our individuals are actually good. So maybe 38 is a too big of a number. It's kind of a charity. Why is it 38? Maybe they should make it only 10. Right? Well, only 6 are top 40. Come on.
NCAA Cross Country is built around getting all the best teams there and getting superstar individuals there. That's the whole idea. It does not weight heavily towards who can be between 50 and 100 on the individual side. Yeah. Is that correct? That's how I've always interpreted the system. You want to make sure the one superstar who can win the entire thing, who's on a not good team, you want to make sure, like Lowy Lang needs to be there. Obviously, that makes sense. But beyond that, it's all about teams.
Yeah, 10 women finished top 40 who were individuals last year. So 10 women, 6 men out of 38 each. I think the concern is going to be like, it sucks, but that's going to be one of those aspects of this new qualification that through the cracks, there are going to be some casualties. I mean, I remember Christopher Ollie, who's like a 1340 guy, didn't qualify individually because he was just happened to be in the West Regional, and he just got beat by 4 other really good individuals. There's no and it was a fluke situation. I feel like that happens, but in the end, as long as we, like you said, as long as we're getting our Lowies, our Kennedy Kathukas, our I'm not Wayne Claudia's on a team who's like a good individual, or like our Joyce Camellis or Mercy Chilangats of Alabama's there.
Mercy! I saw Alabama. You had him number 1. That was surprising. I didn't think she should be number 1. Yeah. It's not perfect. I guess, though, this year the omissions will be more noticeable because it's a different system, and people will just push back about it more because they'll say, well, I know the old system, I would have been able to go. I think people need to just be ready for that fact. And there's a way that this all works out neatly based on qualification. And there's another path where it is a bit of a mess. I think both things are possible, but you got to win your conference meet. If you're an individual, be safe, win your conference meet. And all those teams in those Power Fives have to try to rack up some wins, either in the conference meet or in one of those earlier season meets, just to put themselves higher up on the pecking order.
Man, I can't wait. It's going to be wild.
You're excited. You hear chaos, and I can just see your ears burning. We'll leave it there. FloTrack Podcast at gmail.com is the email address. Write us in. Like Gordon said, indoor preview coming up soon. So if you have indoor questions, send it our way. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks to Elon for producing. Lincoln and I will be here tomorrow. We'll talk to you guys then.